Hello friends and welcome back to Digitalk. So in the previous sessions I have covered the basic concepts of LLM, large language models. Okay, what exactly is LLM and how it works. Now in the continuation of same, in this particular session I am going to cover the RAG, which is called the Retrieval Augmented Generation. Okay, so what is RAG, how it works and how it is related with the LLM. So how we use the LLM inside the RAG. People think that RAG is an alternate of LLM, which is not true. LLM has a different capability which we use in the rack for some specific purpose. Okay, so I will explain you with again in a simple way so that you can completely understand what is RAG, how it works, and how it is related with the LLMs. Okay, so RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, a technique that gives AI access to external up-to-date knowledge before generating a response. Okay, so this simple definition is giving you the multiple things. The very first thing, the RAG, full form of RAG is Retrieval Augmented Generation. So retrieval means it is retrieving some information, the very first thing. And then once the information is retrieved, it augments that and then the response is generated. Okay, so this is called the retrieval augmented generation. Now LLM also does the same thing. You can ask any question to your LLM like the chat GPT or Claude, Gemini. Okay, it generates the response for you, right? And you can interact with and you will get all the response. Okay, but there's a difference between LLMs and RAG. Okay, so RAG is a technique that give AI access to external up-to-date data knowledge before generating a response. So what we know about LLMs, what we have learned in the previous session. So LLM work on the data which is publicly available. Okay, which is not specifically personal to you or to any organization. That means the information that has been available on the public domain. Okay, for example, internet. Right, we have in internet we have a lot of documents. There are a lot of blogs. There are a lot of websites. There are a lot of PDFs. There are a lot of documents. Right, there are a lot of information is available over the internet. Right, so LLMs basically trained on the humongous data that is publicly available. Okay, uh, for example, you may have your own personal data, right? And an organization may have some internal policy document or some internal other information, right, which is there inside specifically in the within the boundary of the organization. It is not available on the public domain. So LLM will not have the access to those documents, right? So LLM can't respond to the information which it can't access or in which it has not been trained, right? So whenever LLMs are trained on certain amount of a data, it generates a specific model like 4.2, 5.2. Okay, so now what we know about LLM, it has a limitation, and limitation in terms it doesn't have access to your own personal data or your organizational data. Now you want to generate some kind of a answers, okay, on a query that is specifically dedicated to your personal data or maybe some organizational data. If I talk about you, okay, if you ask a question to the chat GPT, okay, what was my grade in the graduation? Okay, so chat GPT or maybe any LLM will not able to answer that because this information is not there in the public domain and your LLM has not been trained on that, right? Similarly, if someone asks that like what is my organization leave policy, so LLM will not able to answer that because the policy is specific to your organization which may not be available in the public domain. Okay, so LLM will not able to answer that one and it will simply ask you that, okay, I do not have access to your organization documentation, so I cannot answer that. Okay, it may try to hallucinate something and it may give you some basic generic details about the leave policies of some organization for which the data is available on the net, but again it is going to tell you that it is not your organization data. Okay, because that information is not with the LLM. So that is the LLM. Now when we talk about RAG, so it access the external data, up to date data. Why it is saying up to date data knowledge? Because it retrieve the information, real time information, okay, from the external data sources, okay, which is, you can say, the in which the LLMs are not trained. Okay, so I will explain you next few slides and you will get the complete clarity. So now what is the purpose of RAG is, first is the retrieval. That means find relevant info from a knowledge base. So you have given the access to your RAG, for example, the access to your organization's PDF files. Okay, so it will retrieve the relevant documents, whatever the relevant documents or knowledge base are there. Okay, and then it will augment that, like enrich the AI prompt with retrieve context. So that means once the information is retrieved, so there would be multiple documents and there would be multiple relevant information. Okay, and some of them may be relevant, but some of them may not be relevant. So it augment that information. Okay, it will augment that information which is exactly relevant, and then it send, right, to get or generate the response for the end user. So this is the work of retrieval augmented generation. Okay, now but how it work with the LLM? What is the role of LLM here? Okay, so now if we do a small comparison of LLM and the RAG, so LLM is knowledge frozen at training cutoff. What does it mean? As I said, LLM is trained on certain humongous data. Okay, now suppose that today the LLM is trained after the complete training. A model has been created, 4.2 model of the Chat GPT or maybe Claude. Okay, so now it is trained on the data that is available till today. Okay, now suppose that now the next model is going to be released after 3 months. After 3 months. So now from today onwards, there would be a gap of 3 months in between, right? So this 3 month gap, whatever the data is generated, okay, in between these 3 months of a time on the internet, maybe some blogs, some documents, some website, so that information will not be available in this particular model because your model or LLM has not been trained in this particular data, right? So after 3 months, you are again going to train your LLM with the current latest data that is available, and that time maybe the new model given the version 5.2. So at this particular moment, this particular data which was not there in the 4.2 LLM, it will not be now will available in the 5.2. That means knowledge frozen at training cutoff. That means at what time you generated a particular model, so knowledge will be available till that point only. Okay, and it cannot access company documents. So what I said, LLM has a limitation. It cannot access your own personal documentations, your organization documentation, right? Because it is trained specifically on the data which is publicly available. Okay, so it doesn't have the access to your own documents, so it can't answer your personal questions. It can't answer on a specific question that is relevant to a particular organization. It may hallucinate outdated facts. Okay, so as I said in the previous session in the introduction to LLM, okay, so whenever we ask any question to LLM, okay, it there wouldn't be any questions and answers so that you think that it will take our questions and will give you the answer of that question. There is no ready to use questions and answers here. It generates the response at the runtime. Okay, and how it generate the response, it based on the priority. It always predict the next word after a particular word. So if you ask any question, okay, it make a series of the different words, relevant words, and then it frame the answer. Okay, it doesn't look for the relevant answer of the questions. It frame the different words. It set the priority for each and every word, and then it give you the answer. Okay, so if you are asking a question, for example, you may be asking about a fact or a question which is not available, which is not valid. Okay, but still it will give you the response. Okay, it will give you the response with the full confidence. Okay, and that is called the hallucination. Even the information is not true or may not be available. Okay, but it has to generate some response based on the priority of the different words, keywords. So it will always give you the response. Okay, but it may try to hallucinate the information which is not there in the that particular model, knowledge base of that model. Okay, no access to private internal data, right? As I said, it doesn't have any access to your private or internal data. Now when we talk about the RAG, it always retrieve fresh current data. Why it retrieve always fresh and current data? Because you give the access to your personal data or maybe your organizational data. So your own data, your organization data may always be up to date. So it always look for this data which is retrieve fresh and current data. It can search company knowledge base, right? So if you give the access to your organization data, okay, so it is going to look for your company knowledge base to give you the relevant information. Grounds answer in real document. You always look for the real time documentations and then answer based on that. Okay, works with private and custom data sets. So you will have a private and custom data sets, right? So for your organizations or maybe for your personal use, you will have a data or different kind of a data set which contain the multiple informations which you have a custom data sets, okay, or a private information. Okay, so that means LLMs where you have a limitations in terms of the knowledge, in terms of the trained model, while RAG is doesn't rely on the particular model. It always look for the current information and based on that it generate the response, right? So how RAG works, if I talk about the flow, user ask a question, it first retrieve, so it search knowledge base for the relevant document. So whatever the question that you have asked, okay, it will go to the RAG retrieve. It will look for all the documentations which is available. okay, for the relevant information. For example, you may have given the access to your organization policy document. There would be multiple PDFs, okay, which is talking about some policies, okay, but out of all documents, one document will be most relevant, which is talking about the leave policies or or the questions that you have raised, right? So it has to identify the relevant particular document, and then it augment that. That means it combine your question, whatever the user that asked the question, and then retrieve the context. Okay, so that means, as I said, there could be multiple documents are available, so it has to identify which one is the best suited document, which is relevant to your questions. It will fetch that information along with your question, and then it is going to send the response to the LLM. So this is the part of the LLM, generate the answer. So once RAG work is completed, it will go to the last phase, which is called a generate answer, right? Because we know that LLM is very good in generating the answers, right? We can talk to the LLMs in just like the humans. Okay, it has a brain, it has a memory, and it generate a very good answers of our questions, right? So here, what is the work of LLM? The work of LLM is to frame the answer of the user question which has been asked, okay, based on the information that has been retrieved, okay, and then present it to the user. So RAG is retrieving the information from your personal documents, personal database, and LLM is framing the response which need to send back to the end user. So this is the relation between RAG and the LLM. How LLM works, how LLM is related with the RAG. Okay, and LLM is not going to replace your RAGs, right? Now, this is a real-time example, like there is a chatbot for a particular hospital, okay, and someone asking a query like, what are the visiting hours and COVID safety rules at city hospital, okay. So now this information is specifically related with a particular hospital, which is city hospital, right? So this information may not be available in the public domain, okay, and may not be accurate, okay. So now, but if this hospital is having an integration, okay, of the chatbot with the real time data or the current data, okay, which is in the hospital database, okay. So whenever the user enter a query, okay, like visiting hours, so when you enter this particular prompt, okay, so it extracts the keyword like the visiting hours. This is the keyword. What are the visiting hours? Okay, then there is a keyword like COVID, okay, and then safety route. So it extracts certain keywords, okay, from that particular query, and then it retrieves the information from the city hospital documentation. So there would be some policy documentation. There would be a PDF on the policy. There would be a PDF on the safety guidelines. Okay, so once you will provide the this particular documentation access to your RAG, okay, then it is going to get the real time information or the right information, okay, for the particular query, and then it is going to augment. So once the response is generated, okay, like we have a question that has been asked, right, and apart from that question, you will have the relevant information that is going to extract from the multiple documents. So there would be multiple documents, not only two documents. There could be some other documents, and then the related information will be extracted. Okay, so this all information is going to send to your LLM. Okay, and then LLM will generate the proper response based on the information that has been retrieved, like the visiting hours will be 9 a.m. to 8 a.m. Okay, and some specific information like the mask required in the ICU. So you will get the proper response of the queries, okay, in this particular situation with the help of RAG. Okay, now the RAG and LLMs better together. So now at least hope you understand that why we use a LLM with the RAG. Okay, so when we talk about lag, it is to understand language and reasoning, generate fluent responses, trained on broad knowledge, and fixed knowledge cutoff date. So cutoff date means, as I said, there would be a trained model of each and every LLMs. Okay, so there would be a fixed knowledge that is specifically applicable when this particular model was generated, right? But when we talk about RAG layer, it retrieves fresh and relevant document because it is going to contact the specific organizational data or maybe your individual data. So you will get the proper relevant information. So access private company data, it is going to access your companies or your private data, and ground answers in real sources, right? So you will provide the actual documentation of your organization. Okay, so it will going to give the real response and the information from the real sources, and it eliminate hallucination, right? So because now we are providing the source of truth, we are providing our organizational data, we are providing our personal data, so there would not be any hallucinations, just like we get in the LLM. All right, the things that is not there in the world, your LLM can respond on that queries as well. Okay, so that is called hallucination. So in the RAG we will not have hallucinations, we will have the actual facts which is based on the data. So now what is the key takeaway from the session is RAG is a retrieval augmented generation, a way to give AI fresh knowledge. LLMs alone have a knowledge cutoff, while RAG fixes this by fetching relevant doc at query time. RAG doesn't replace LLMs, it enhances them with real world context used in chatbot, search, customer support, healthcare, legal, and many more places. And core component are basic knowledge base, an embedding or search layer, and LLM. So these all are the points we have discussed in detail. So now hope it is clear to you what is the RAG, why we use the RAG, what is the difference between RAG and LLMs, and how we can use both together.